Welcome to the Soul Mirror. I'm your host, Shreya. Today we sit down with someone whose life's work has been shaped by both profound loss and remarkable discovery. Jason Ott brings a rare blend of science, lived experience, and soulful curiosity to the question that haunts so many. What truly drives illness? And how do we find our way back to balance? In this conversation, we explored the intriguing idea of grounding into one's own phase, an unexpectedly intimate pathway to healing that bridges physiology, presence, and self awareness. Let's dive with the clarity, openness, and a willingness to question what we think we know. Welcome, Jason. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Sure, very nice to meet you as well, and I'm excited to hear what and how we go through this topic because it is definitely one that is very important for many people.
Definitely. I surely agree with you. And also, what does grounding into your face really mean in the context of healing illness? And why is this area of the body so significant in your approach?
So I feel the the people that I wrote about in my book that achieved remission and have maintained remission, there's a pattern through all of their journeys. Uh, it, Most people get so focused on just the physical illness and they're disregarded that emotional and spiritual health. And there is one particular part for me anyway, it helped me tremendously to be able to have success reversing my autoimmune, but it is finding purpose in the pain. So that's to me the pillar of what our faith and our spiritual practice is supposed to do for us is taking the unknown suffering of life, helping us define it, helping us look within, discover what I'm supposed to learn at a soul level, and then begin making those changes in my life. So for me, grounding yourself in that is the pinnacle of how someone can have the correct mindset and take the correct actions to heal their physical body. But it starts with that spiritual why and grounding first.
That's so beautiful. And also, how did you first notice this connection in your own journey or like own work?
Well, I think there was a subconscious recognizing of it just growing up and witnessing part of my mom's healing journey. And so she was so grounded in her faith and in being okay with the unknown, right? Is like, I'm still going to move forward with courage. I'm still going to take today's action needed, even though it's unknown the outcome. And that's what our faith really starts to do is gives us that courage. And so I think subconsciously that was planted. And then that was the biggest part for me. Like I needed that spiritual why to have enough meaning behind me actually taking the action to change. So, like, it just wasn't gonna be for something that didn't mean anything, and so it had to be a very specific why for just my situation, and so that allowed me to then be okay moving forward, believing that no matter what happens, it's gonna be right for me, and it's what I'm supposed to go through, and continuously taking that action. So, it's like my own experience was what started it, and then the first person that went into remission with the cancer, second person with autoimmune, and then the clients started to. And I just went back and looked at their stories and saw as many patterns that had overlap with people that were actually healing. And that was one that was constantly there. They had a purpose grounded in their spiritual belief system and faith.
Yes, that personal link often reveals more than any theory, and I'd love for listeners to hear how intuition and science made for you in that moment. And also, you have connected modern lifestyle patterns with rising chronic disease rates. In what ways do you feel this connection from our own body, especially the face, adds to this decline?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Um, well, Okay, so if you don't consciously center yourself in your direction, then we're just going to go with the flow to some degree, whether that's, the city you live in, cultural norms. You start doing in general what the people around you are doing. And so that can't and isn't always the best thing, especially if the normal is chronic illness. And I don't want to do the normal actions around health if that's the normal outcome. So I think you being able to get planted in your individual thought, that is what I feel like the faith does for somebody if you have the correct patterns or you do not. So with me, though I wasn't conscious of many actions leading up to me getting an autoimmune condition, once I started to become conscious, the connection back to those actions was rooted in having the wrong mindset. And my mindset was wrong because my beliefs were they were warped. They were skewed. They were not correctly with divine love and with gratitude and with joy. And so I realized all these actions I took that I didn't consciously go, hey, I want to do this and not. I was just going with that flow when I was younger in life. It came back to me not choosing intentionally what I believe and then making sure my day to day actions line up with my beliefs. Once I established the beliefs, then, well, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to eat there. And no, I don't want to stay out late and do this because my belief for myself and my health and my future had changed. And so the faith of that, creating that belief to me, that is where the patterns start. Is like you got to know what patterns you're creating or not creating, because the reality of life is going to come at you no matter what.
Yes, that is so amazing, and thank you for sharing this. And also, do you believe this disconnect is cultural or like neurological or emotional as its root?
I think it's all. I don't think there is an either or. I think there's an and I think the degree of the and is different for each of us, and that's the individual piece. So yes, I think depending on the person, and if they had a strong cultural influence or they did not at all, because I recognize that in America too, like there's not as many cultural beliefs passed down in many other countries in the world there is. So there's a bigger focus on purpose each day than I feel like America does. They don't really look at life that way. And so their decisions, well, they align that way. It's like they're not fulfilling a purpose on a spiritual level.
Yes. I think your perspective challenges the usual blame placed on isolated habits and also pushing us toward a deeper conversation about embodiment itself. And also, your research into the biochemical intelligence of plants is really fascinating. How does facial grounding complement like the medicinal impact of the plant-based healing protocols?
What I'm going to give you kind of two part. What science and research says, and then what I think, because my opinion on my experience and what I've witnessed is a little bit different than what we can prove currently with science and research. So science and research around it, your spiritual embodiment in your belief, a person in general will have a more calm nervous system than people that have no spiritual practice, regardless of the religion, the culture, anything in the world. If you do practice looking at the world from a lens of that love, that enlightenment, the gratitude, loving our neighbors, doing what's right, that changes our nervous system physically in our body. So then the chemical part of how we digest food, how our body can then take that food, organize the nutrients so we can absorb them, get rid of the waste that's created effectively, and actually do that. Now your physical body is in a deeper alignment. Gratitude has been shown over and over and over again to benefit the chemical response of our mind and our emotions, and then also how we digest food and if our body's in a state to receive nourishment. So nourishment for me starts at a soul level of you wanting to nourish that piece of you, which then leads to the rest of it. So what I've noticed with that is there is, I'm going to say synergy or cohesion between the person and the plants and the herbs and the things they're connecting with on a deeper level. Their gratitude for it is better. And I believe they receive more of those benefits with their therapies, because this is the thing that is hard for me to explain is I've had people with cancers, with autoimmune that have done all natural. And then I've had people that have done all allopathic. And then I've had a bunch of people right in the middle that use a combination of everything. So I've witnessed people that maybe used a chemical form of medicine that we know is toxic, but their spiritual belief around it and how they're using it and strategically with everything else they're doing, it doesn't impact them the same when they have that spiritual foundation. You can say it's, God protecting or some connection that way. I think so, but I've seen people have far less side effects from conventional treatments, whether it's medication, chemo, radiation. So I think all of that matters on you knowing your why for doing it and being excited for that.
Yes. And is there a particular plant or herbal approach that pairs especially very powerfully with this practice?
I think it helps all of them, because if you're living from fear and scared of doing anything, you're most likely not going to receive as many positive benefits from it, and vice versa. If you're looking across the board on any form of medicine, natural or not, or in between, is you're gonna get a better experience from that. So I think it's a little of both.
Yeah. I think that synergy between internal nourishment and somatic awareness really feels compelling. And I would love to highlight how accessible these tools can be. And also, many people believe illness is purely physical. How do you introduce the idea that healing may also require confronting the emotional narratives stored in the face?
Mm. Who the first step is I gotta pay attention to the person I'm working with. So I really honor individuals. Like I think we can learn a lot about what the human body needs and what health can be in general, but then I have to look at that person across from me as a complete individual and not have those biased thoughts. So I think the first part of it is going into it like that, where as you develop a plan for them, you got to know when to insert that conversation around the emotional side. So depending on where they're at, I'm going to get them having some success in where their current belief is at. So if that's the physical body, they understand it more. I want to build some rapport that way, get them moving in the direction they want. And then as I get to know them more and find out about some of those, you know, hot topics or hot buttons, that's when I start to introduce. So from day one, I explain I believe in mind, body, spirit. I think all three have a connection to physical disease, mental disease, whatever you're thinking of. One third, one third, one third. So I tell them that up front. So once they hire me, they know that's my belief. I just don't always go there right away, depending on what that person's comfortable with. Once they establish a good foundation with their physical lifestyle, sleeping better, more nourishment, more water, it we have to go there. And so I begin planting those seeds, preparing them for those conversations to get into, all right. So emotions have a powerful connection behind our physical health. And that's where we start to get into the vagus nerve, the brain connected to the body. What does, fear do to our biochemistry versus gratitude? And we can start to unpack that a little more. So hopefully the person starts to connect. Wow, I had this belief that gave me this mindset, and that mindset made me do this, 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 and this. And those things were not serving my highest good. And so I try to be very practical. And then I use myself as an example of this was my belief, this was my mindset, this was my action, this got me sick. Now, this is my belief. This makes up my mindset. These are my actions, and I'm in complete remission. So I try to walk them through how it's connected very practically once I get to know them enough that I can do and connect dots with something meaningful to them, actually, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. And I think thank you for explaining this it so beautifully. And is there a moment where you saw someone's healing accelerate because they addressed this hidden emotional imprints?
Yes, 100%. And I've seen this go both ways. So, one of the things that I pride myself on doing is I believe that experts can have their expertise, but then we can't do it all for somebody. So, I know I cannot provide 100% of the answers for all people I work with, but I can do what I am trained to do in my expertise and then meet people that are experts in those areas and refer. So, I've been working with numerous people on emotional health, from actual psychologists to people that cross over between emotional and spiritual work. And one woman I've worked with out of Canada has been awesome. Numerous patients, always autoimmune, always cancer. And we have seen it go both ways when she has noticed if somebody has a good foundation built, nourishing their body, nourishing their mind in the right ways physically, and then they come do emotional work with her, she's like, they are ready and they change quicker and they receive it better and they hear me better, and vice versa. When somebody has done a lot of that emotional work, they come in and they hit the ground running on the physical lifestyle change and they get great results because they're ready for it. Their mind, their emotions, their body is ready for this physical change and nourishment. And so we believe it changes it by upwards of 40 to 50%, the speed at which they see improvement when you layer each part of your being.
Yes. And I think those stories often shift people's entire perception of healing. And I think listeners will resonate with the human truth beneath the science also. And also, you have witnessed conditions like heart disease and certain cancer respond to combine lifestyle and like herbal intervention. How does grounding into the face feed into long term sustainable that healing?
I'm well that I think that's the only way it can happen is if somebody actually has a consistent faith to show up every day and take action, even if the results are not what they wanted or it's not happening as fast as they wanted. So for things like heart disease, cancers, and some conditions that might take a year to maybe even 3 years to fully improve health, if you're doing all the right things, even those things are even more critical for the faith component because there's going to be series of building changes and you're doing this work and you're changing your life and you're creating a new routine, and it might take 6 7 8 months before you see a really good positive change if your illness is that severe. So if you're not grounded there, you're going to give up very quickly, you're going to throw in the towel because of what's actually happening to you. So with those things, I think it's absolutely essential that I don't see people of the extreme conditions see any good results if they don't have that because they give up too soon. And with natural healing, the body has to go through a process that we can optimize, but God is what created our body and the healing process. So we can only optimize it. We can't just negate it and speed it up and act like certain things don't exist. And that brings me to the next part, which is getting the most out of your health and healing that is up to your potential. We don't know. I want everybody to get all the way healthy again. But the reality is, depending on when they meet me, they might not. And maybe they don't have all the resources to make the changes or see the doctors or whatever it may be. And so, in that case, having enough faith to say, I'm going to do everything I can, even if it means I still don't make it through or achieve the goal I wanted for my health. I'm going to get the best out of my life and I accept whatever I get openly and with gratitude. So I think both of those matter because with my mom's case, she wasn't going to turn the corner and get all of her health back. We got a lot back. We got many more years, but it was just the reality of the severity of her condition. So acceptance, I think, is rooted in your spiritual belief, in your spiritual practice. So if you have that, you're going to be able to accept both sides and actually see some positive healing in your story.
Yes, simplicity is really empowering, and your practical guidance will give listeners a starting point they can implement immediately. And this is a wonderful conversation with you. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Best way is empoweredprevention.com. That's my website. But then on social media, same thing at Empowered Prevention, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, all those. It's at empoweredprevention.com. And you can find me in every way, shape, or form.
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and know more from you. And thank you for sharing such a powerful perspective, spending conversation. And if today, like for our listeners, if today's dialogue sparked something within you, like curiosity, courage, or even a subtle shift in self awareness, take it with you. Explore your own patterns, reconnect with your own body, and lean into the practices that remind you of your inherent capacity to heal. Keep questioning, keep learning, and above all, keep choosing the path that brings you back to yourself. Thank you.